What's up, college football fans and Mean Green fans? Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show, joined today by Eric Henry from Horns 24/7. Really excited to get him on. It is the Alabama-Texas week, so he's swamped. This is why we're doing this so late. There's the downtown Austin behind him, if you can see him. It looks beautiful. But Eric, thank you so much for jumping on. How you been?
Oh man, what is going on? I think this is the first time I'm joining you as a member of 24/7 Sports, part of the CBS Sports Network, and of course Horns 24/7. So appreciate you having me on. I can only get so far away from the FIU beat. So while I'm not covering FIU anymore, I can always make time for my old friends to answer a couple questions with it being FIU North Texas week.
Awesome. Well, we do appreciate it. So just kind of jumping right into things. So North Texas is coming off a pretty kind of a statement loss to kick off the Morris era against Cal at DAC Stadium. There was a lot of energy going into it. So after last Saturday's game, it's kind of been a little bit of deflating. And North Texas is looking for a statement win, I would think, to try to, get some interest buyback in. But, FIU, they're coming off, being that the season's so young, they did play in week 0. So my first question is, do you think that will play to much of a significant advantage for FIU when it comes to playing North Texas, having that extra game on them this early?
First off, long live Apogee Stadium. I just got to get that first and foremost. But
my wife got this painting for me of Apogee. Then they switched the name to DAC, so I don't know.
No, it's interesting you say that, right? I mean, with FIU being such a young team, and again, in the effort of full disclosure, I stopped covering FIU in the spring, so I haven't been around them in the fall as much, but having covered them prior to now with 24/7 Sports covering FIU for the past 5.5 years. The big thing with Mike McIntyre's club is they're so young, right? So maybe in a sense you can say that every game will help them grow. I mean, they just made a quarterback change. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit, where they went from last year's starter and Grayson James, they went to the true freshman starter, Kewan Jenkins, the former Auburn commit. He was committed to Auburn until the coaching change happened, and then FIU was able to swoop in and land him. And Kewan is a highly touted player that even when I was there during the spring, Mike McIntyre and company were really high, and his nickname is Lights Out. And they began the spring, signing day presser with, flicking of the lights and saying lights out, because they were that happy that they had Kewan Jenkins, a 3-star recruit, a local product, won multiple state titles in Dade County. Of course, I know it's a South Florida landscape. That is not very easy to do, the South Florida high school football landscape. So yeah, with him and just, how young they are, having lost 11 starters due to either graduation, the transfer portal, or otherwise, having an extra game, I don't want to say it gives them an advantage over North Texas, but I think every game, every rep, every snap will help the young Panthers, no doubt.
So the former Auburn commit in Jenkins, last game he came in for Grayson James, right? Spot he took. So he comes in against Maine's FCS. Is that correct?
FCS, yes, correct.
Okay. So he goes 15 for 30 for 292, 2 touchdowns and interception, about exactly 50% completion rate. And he nearly had 300 yards. And, he had one receiver, Mitchell, who has over 201 yards of that. Kind of reminds me of a Jalen Darden situation. Back when Ani and him had that connection, it was just Ani had some really great stats, but, 200 of it was probably to Jalen Darden. So my question is to you, North Texas, they came in, they're coming in from Cal rushing 370 something yards on them, and this new 3-3-5 with Coach Capone being the new DC. Do you anticipate FIU trying to run the ball with Lawrence, who had a big game? I think he had like 130 yards against Louisiana Tech, or staying, more in the air with Jenkins being the new quarterback?
I think Mike McIntyre wants to be balanced. It's one of the things they talked about last year, trying to be balanced between the run and the pass. But my anticipation is they're going to ride the hot hand. I mean, here's the thing. If you saw the team's season opening game, which while I didn't cover it, I did attend that game. I wasn't there in professional capacity, but I did attend that game. They tried to run the football, they tried to pass the football, but it just wasn't there. So they rode Shamari Lawrence and rode the hot hand until they had to turn back to the passing game when they were down against Louisiana Tech. So I think you're going to see more of that, right? Because Shamari Lawrence didn't necessarily have a great game last week against Maine. We saw the run defense stifled, the Maine run defense stifle the FIU rushing attack. And that's kind of to be expected, with a very young offensive line, replacing, again, several starters on that line. John Bach returns, Jacob Peace returns, but, bringing in new guys like Travis Burke, FCS transfer from Gardner-Webb, a big guy. So 6'9", 290 as a left tackle. There in Philip Houston, former JUCO player, was with FIU last year at right tackle, right? So they're breaking in new players at certain positions. I think that's to be expected, to have some ups and downs in the offensive line. But I just think they're going to ride the hot hand. Something that I think is interesting is, we haven't seen too much of Josiah Miamin, the tight end, who, of course, gets the starting spot for Rivaldo Fairweather now at Auburn. But yeah, Chris Mitchell is a guy, you talk about him a little bit. He's been with the program for 5 years now, right? So this game where he actually tied a program record, tied T.Y. Hilton and Tyrese Chambers, two very, prominent names in terms of receiving yards, 201 yards last week. So, it's nice to see him have a big game. And then, of course, Dean Patterson as well. So I'll be interested to see kind of how North Texas can match up with the FIU receivers. But to answer your question, I think it's going to ride the hot hand and see what works.
It's pretty good for someone who doesn't cover the team, I must say. But moving over to North Texas's side, offensively, they really need to come in and make a statement, I feel like, to get their fans re-engaged and just maybe, kind of a win is a win and all that. But I feel like with FIU, a close game one, a low scoring venture would probably not sit too well with North Texas fans. So that being said, let me ask you, the Stone Earl, he had about a 63% completion rate, 174 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions against Cal. Really pretty much all in the first half. Second half, he played a good chunk until about the end of the third quarter, but the offensive as a whole only got 1 first down. So really totally got shut down. But looking at it from Coach Morse's standpoint, do you think he sees any value in, if this season's not going to be all that it could be, getting his quarterback some stats from an attractive standpoint, maybe these Cash McCullen, who's a quarterback recruit who's currently verbally committed to North Texas. His stock's probably rising a bit as his senior campaign goes on in high school. But to kind of keep guys like that locked in and maybe, add another high school guy or transfer guy if he can display, a product to where quarterbacks will thrive in this offense. But do you have any thoughts there on the passing attack that North Texas could have against FIU?
I'm going to take the second part. I'm going to take the first part of that first. It's an interesting way you put it. Having covered Conference USA for 5, of course, North Texas not in Conference USA anymore, but I only say that to say I covered North Texas for 5 seasons. I don't think this program should be in a place in where they're just trying to attract a quarterback for racking up stats. Quite frankly, we covered this game together last year. North Texas routed FIU. I mean, that was a game that, had Asanani looking like he was legit contender for CUSA Player of the Year, and North Texas truly looking as if they could compete, for a conference title. So I guess I'm just thinking about that, and I don't think I understand the premise of the question being, hey, if the season doesn't go necessarily the way you want it, starting with this game, do you try to just, be an attractive offense to keep a quarterback recruiter otherwise? But no, I don't think. I'll put you this way. I would be curious, now that I'm not as plugged in with the league as I was before, as to where North Texas fans feel they are in the hierarchy of the New American. Having covered, again, a handful of those teams that went from CUSA to the American, would look at North Texas definitely higher than a USF, higher than a Charlotte, higher than an ECU. I would think they'd be in that middle of the pack to where they should be wanting to compete, So I guess that's how to answer that part of the question. As to your question about this week and how, they may fare, it's interesting because FIU's secondary is one that does return a fair amount of talent. They did struggle last year towards the end of the season. They were a team that allowed a lot of passing yards, but it does seem in year 2 in defensive partner Javon DeWitt's 3-4 system that they're playing. And you can say this tends to be the thing with a lot of defenses, right? It doesn't matter what level. In year 1, when you're learning a new system, you're out there thinking, right? Like, am I taking the right step? Am I taking the right angle? Is this the right zone? Is this the right read? In year 2, you should be a little more confident in knowing your decision making out there, right? When you have a player like Jamal Potts, who's FIU's nickelback, who's one of the better nickelbacks in all of Conference USA, that should help in the secondary. Of course, they did struggle a little bit against Louisiana Tech's Hank Bachmeier, right, and Smoke Harris. So I think for North Texas, they should be looking to exploit FIU. And certainly UNT has a better passing game than Maine. They should be looking to exploit FIU in similar ways that Louisiana Tech did. While North Texas might not have a player of Smoke Harris's caliber, there were some ways that the pass defense was vulnerable.
Last question. So currently North Texas is a 12.5-point favor. Do you like North Texas to cover that, or are you picking FIU on that?
I am inclined to say that I think North Texas will cover. However, we did see how tough FIU did play Louisiana Tech. They, I believe, were a 9 or 10-point dog heading into Ruston. But yeah, I just think here's the biggest thing with the Panthers, right? I think for Mike McIntyre's club, they're discovering, and I said this to some people on the ground there when I was in Ruston, I think FIU has 22 or 25 players, if you include the specialists, that can compete in Conference USA or, in this case, against an American opponent, right? The key for Mike McIntyre is finding 40, finding 45, finding 50 players that can compete at a consistent level. And I think that's the thing why I'm sure the Vegas odd makers saw the game against Maine and have to be scared off saying, well, they started a true freshman quarterback and they weren't able to put Maine away. So it'll be interesting to see how David Yost, Javon DeWitt, and company, Mike McIntyre can rebound and game plan. But yeah, in my mind, I would be willing to take the points just because I think they're still trying to figure out the depth that they have on this team. Again, as I mentioned, having lost 11 starters in the transfer portals, particularly guys who went Power 5. Shamar Abdi-Ali went to Houston. Tyrese Chambers went to Maryland. Rivaldo Fairweather went to Auburn. Demetrius Hill went to Illinois. So Gathan Bernadelle went to Stanford, right? So it wasn't like they lost guys who, just at anywhere. They're losing guys who are significant contributors at big time, Power 5 programs. So I think finding that depth is going to be an issue, and I think it'll play a difference on Saturday.
Eric, thank you so much for your time. If there's any Texas fans watching this late, be sure to check out Eric's work at Horns 24/7. And Eric, best of luck for the rest of the football season. I know you're going to have your hands full.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.